you ready to revolutionize your relationship with money? Welcome to the Finding Financial Freedom podcast with the Frugal Physician, where Dr. Disha Spath will be your companion on this exciting financial adventure. Get ready to conquer debt, build wealth, and embrace a mindful spending lifestyle that will empower you to live life on your own terms.
Pearson Ravitz' story begins with Dr. Stephanie Pearson, a passionate OB-GYN at the height of her career. But then, a shoulder injury struck during a precipitous delivery. Her dreams were shattered, leaving her unable to practice medicine. Determined to make a difference, Stephanie became an advocate for her peers, guiding them through the complex disability process. Alongside insurance expert Scott Ravitz, Stephanie founded Pearson Ravitz, a company determined to approach insurance differently. Together, they set their mission to educate and empower physicians to protect their most valuable asset, their income, and the most important people in their life, their family. Today, Pearson Ravitz serves the medical community in all 50 states. At Pearson Ravitz, they understand the unique concerns of physicians. Physician-founded and physician-focused, Pearson Ravitz builds human connections before they create quotes. Life can change in an instant. It's hard to imagine that a sudden illness or injury could leave you and your family in a devastating financial situation. But with a little planning and guidance, you can prepare for every possibility. Visit PearsonRavitz.com to schedule your consultation with a Pearson Ravitz advisor. Welcome to the Finding Financial Freedom with the Frugal Physician podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Disha Spath, and today we have a very special guest with us, Dr. Kristine Goins. Dr. Goins completed her adult psychiatry residency at Emory University and her child and adolescent psychiatry fellowship at Yale. Her journey from traditional medical practice to becoming a digital nomad reflects her passion for exploring healing approaches outside of conventional medicine. Motivated by a desire to make a difference, Dr. Kristine Goins founded Nomad MD, where she combines her medical expertise with powerful coaching techniques to help her fellow physicians thrive. At Nomad MD, Dr. Goins empowers doctors to break free from traditional medical constraints, guiding them towards location freedom and the opportunity to immerse themselves in a nomadic lifestyle. Today, we are privileged to have Dr. Goins as our guest to share her expertise on finding financial freedom while traveling the world as a physician. All right. Hello. Welcome, Dr. Goins.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So your journey from the traditional medical path to becoming a digital nomad is so inspiring, and I can't wait to hear your story. We're really excited to learn from your experiences today. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself and, your background and what brought you here?
Of course. So I am Kristine Goins. I'm an integrative adult, child, and adolescent psychiatrist, physician coach. And I initially started my, journey of becoming a doctor very young. Like many doctors I'm learning started in elementary school.
Right.
A lot of us did that. That's just kind of been a part of my life and my desire for a long time. But another strong passion that I had in my youth was traveling. And I picked this up as a teenager, reading books. We never, could afford to or had the opportunity to travel, but I traveled a ton in my imagination through the books that I was reading. And so I had an idea of, living a life where I would be all over the world and speaking different languages. And so when it came to actually pursuing medicine and getting ready for medical school, I had a lot of conflict come up around like this other life that I was supposed to live, because I found that medicine really required, or seemed to require at the time, all of my time, my energy, my resources, everything had to be very focused and directed there. I remember this period of time in college when one of my peers actually passed away. And I went to my mom kind of distraught, like, what if something happens to me and I don't get a chance to travel the world the way I planned? Like, how can I continue on with medicine knowing that it's going to take so much time away from the life that I was supposed to be living? And, she promised me, she said she would put up the house. If anything happened, she would make sure that I traveled the world. I went along with it and continued. And so I came to these different places in training where I had the opportunity, like in med school, I took a month off In between, that first summer that we get, I went to Costa Rica and stayed with a family, learning medical Spanish and traveling. And then in fellowship, I took a month off and went to Nepal and stayed in a Tibetan Buddhist monastery to study mindfulness. Those were really incredible opportunities. And of course, I took vacations. I always felt that even if I had a week-long vacation, a 10-day vacation, it never really fulfilled me. Still didn't align with the lifestyle that I really wanted to live. It still didn't allow for me to pursue all of these different passions that I had that were outside of medicine. And so things kind of came to a head when I became an attending, probably my second year in. I knew that it was probably time for a change. I started to experience burnout. I was doing all of the things that were all the things that I had worked hard to achieve. I was in leadership and I was teaching and I was on all the committees with the communities that I wanted to work with, that I always dreamed of working with as a child. But the more that I took on, the more that I felt so heavy, not just emotionally, physically to the point that every organ system was impacted. I would have chest pains in the middle of my workday. I would have whole body tremors. I ended up in several doctor's offices, including a neurologist's office. And I remember talking to him within a few minutes of our conversation, just, saying how I was stressed, I was exhausted. And he just stopped me and just said, "Do you want me to prescribe you Lexapro?" And at that point, especially being a psychiatrist, I was just like, is this where I'm headed? Because I knew it was about my lifestyle imbalance. It wasn't an imbalance of serotonin. It was a misalignment of my lifestyle with my value. They always say, if you want to see what you value, look at how you spend your time. And all of my time was just medicine. It was just working. So I really felt like I had to make a change. And of course, in all those moments, I'm going along, I'm still going to work. And then during COVID, both of my grandmothers died.
Oh my goodness.
And that was like the wake up call for me. That was when I really sat with myself and I said, okay, we had this 5-year plan where, I was going to do all the things. And then finally, maybe then I could go travel the world. And after both of them passed, it really helped me to get clear about how precious of a commodity time is. And I took a look at my 5-year plan. I changed it into a 5-month plan. And then I booked a one-way ticket to Colombia.
I think so many physicians can relate with what you are describing as far as burnout goes and the experience with the medical system. I too saw a neurologist in residency after I seized after a 30-hour shift.
Wow.
Yeah. And the answer I received, they were very kind, but what they said was, everyone's allowed to seize once. You'll be fine. Just make sure you hydrate next time. And I know a friend who seized and went into status, right? Sunny Smith. And that's how she came up with her awakening of, the importance of work-life balance and recognizing burnout and recognizing when things are toxic in medicine and when we enable toxicity and overworking of our residents and physicians. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's very, very important that you brought that up. And I think as a group, we shouldn't normalize people having somatic symptoms of stress because of their job. That's not okay. You talk a lot about essentialism. Can you explain that in the context of a physician's life and how practicing essentialism can help us achieve time freedom?
Absolutely. So, essentialism is really a concept about deciding what's most essential in your life. So it's really gaining clarity about what your values are and living with intentionality. And so for me, essentialism really isn't about lack or what you can't afford or what other doctors are doing, what other people are doing. It's really, especially when it comes to, let's say, our money, it's about circulating in alignment with your highest values. So whether we're talking about time, whether we're talking about attention, our energy, And money is really energy, it's just another form of energy. And so even when we're talking about money, it's just having that clarity. And for me, with clarity comes the ability to make even quicker decisions because they're so consistently made, quicker, consistently made decisions in alignment with your highest value.
So you have to get really clear about what's essential to you, in other words.
Yes. And then once you become really clear on what's essential to you, then you automatically know what's non-essential. And so removing all of those things helps you to create a vacuum. Right. And that vacuum allows you to remove everything that's unnecessary and have more of everything that you actually want in your life.
So after you booked your ticket to Colombia, did you continue to practice medicine at all?
Yeah, I continued, but in a different way. So I had always, even when I was in academia, I had always done work on the side with my own PLLC. Mm-hmm. And so I continued doing contracting and consulting work in psychiatry. And so one of the things that thinking through my time, I'd always felt that working 5 or more days a week was very backwards to me. And so, I said, I should probably work 2 days a week and have 5 days off. That just
brilliant.
Like it makes more sense.
Yeah, absolutely. In the big picture of things, it certainly does.
I was like, that just seems more in alignment with my value system. And so I've never changed like that schedule. So since then, I've worked 2 days a week and been off 5 days a week. And so that's what I do during my 2 days a week. It's coaching and doing still some consulting and contracting in psychiatry.
Wow. Are you all around the world when you're doing this?
All around the world. So I'm usually in a country for about 3 months.
Okay.
Before I switch to another country, I try to go to 3 different cities, spend a month in each city. And then I have times that I, slow down and maybe stay in one city for a few months. But that's pretty much the cadence of my travel.
Can I ask, do you have a family? Are you single?
I'm single. I have a partner, but I'm single.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And how do you keep in touch with your partner?
FaceTime, phone, traveling together, spending time where they are. And same thing with my family too. Like I'm just an easy excuse for a vacation because I'm somewhere at all times. So it's like, where are you? Let me visit you, And I have periods during the year where I will live with people in my family. They'll come out and live with me in a different country for a month or so. So I'm always seeing the people from the US, even though I'm not there.
That's amazing. And and you give them an excuse to travel as well with your example. That's lovely. So have you used geo-arbitrage at all? I find it to be a fascinating strategy. I haven't been able to implement that. In fact, I kind of did the opposite. I moved to a high tax state from a low tax state. But, my family was here. But do you arbitrage at all in order to save money or tax strategize?
For sure. I think it's such a great strategy to use because many of the times, at least the way that I travel, it allows me to live in a place that has a lower cost of living, but also a much higher quality of life. Mm-hmm. And so I find that, I'm able to eat healthier without thinking too much about it. It's not like I'm going to an organic market. I'm just going to the market,
Right. Everything's organic.
Right. So it's just easier and simpler in terms of having the quality of life that's really in alignment with my values. And, I'm able to kind of navigate my world just easier. Even when I lived, in the US, I didn't have a car. I would try to use public transportation. I would try to walk everywhere. I always liked to live in cities and things like that were very walkable. And so I continued that lifestyle, but with the change in the cost of living, living in DC and living in like Medellin, Colombia is a totally different,
right?
Totally different cost. But both can be really like beautiful and diverse and wonderful culturally. And so that's, something that I benefit from being abroad.
Do you have to pay taxes in the countries that you're in if you're working telemedicine?
In the US, you pay taxes always, forever.
Right. Yeah.
That never ends. But in other countries, you really don't have to pay taxes unless you are staying there for a certain amount of time. For some countries, it's, like 180 days or more. If you're going to be there longer, a lot of countries will also have nomad visas. And within the nomad visa, you're paying a certain amount of taxes to be there for longer periods of time.
Okay. All right. So they do get some extra from you, but you don't have to give them like a specific cut of the money that you're making. What are some specific destinations or approaches you recommend for physicians looking to maximize the benefits of geo-arbitrage?
So, I think some of the favorites are, Central and South America, traveling through Southeast Asia. Those are probably like the most cost effective, I would say, and really beautiful and, a lot of wonderful cultures in all of those places. But people travel through Europe a lot too, because of probably it's cheaper to go in between countries. It's not as cheap doing that in Central and South America. But, when you use strategies for credit card efficiency, it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
Right. So you're really paying for flights. But still, overall cost of living is going to be higher in Europe. It's going to be higher probably in Africa too, as you're traveling, especially if you're not living there full time. But I think traveling through all of those places and through the world, and I have a lot of friends from like Australia, New Zealand there too, even though they were probably not the cheapest, just beautiful places for diversity and to explore.
Traveling full-time sounds so exciting, but it can be kind of pricey. How can physicians optimize their travel experiences while maintaining their financial goals and not overspending?
Yeah, I think that's where the essentialism really comes in, right? Because you do want to be spending money or circulating. I don't like to say spending because it makes it sound like it's going away. But you do want to be circulating money, in alignment with what you really care about. And so one of the strategies that I use when it comes to travel, that's why I say it's not about frugality, because I don't skimp on things that I really care about. If I'm flying and it's 5 hours or more, I need to be in business or first class. I can't skip on it. So in order to do that, I practice credit card efficiency. And so, it really is about understanding and practicing good habits when it comes to credit card use, paying it off, at the end of every month, all of those things that, we know, but also knowing which credit cards are going to give you the best value in terms of the point system that you're going to be using and how you're going to transfer those points to airline partners that you'll be using. It's hard to say which ones. I feel like people ask me a lot of times, like which ones, but it's really specific depending on what your lifestyle is and where you're actually going to be traveling. Like in Central and South America, they don't use American Express. So, a lot of people use Amex in terms of their like travel point strategies. And that works really well if you live in the US and you're going to be traveling to places that accept American Express. But, when you're in other countries where you're not going to be using, American grocery stores and things like that, you're not going to really be getting the value for some of those cards. And so you do have to kind of use a different kind of strategy when you're nomadic and you're spending most of your time outside of the US.
So yeah, Amex is a great example of a card that's not really applicable worldwide. Which company do you use that's most frequently used worldwide?
I would say Chase, like the Chase Sapphire Reserve card. That's one that I've never met a nomad that doesn't have that card.
Right. Yeah, it's my favorite too.
We all have that card.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, other strategies too, when you have multiple businesses, there's other business cards that you use. And I'll, have people in the US that have some of my cards who can go to, Staples and get my Airbnb gift cards and get me 5 points per dollar for every Airbnb purchase that I make. And so I'm really able to maximize my amount of points and strategy being a nomad. So it really does become cost effective. I feel like most people who live in the US probably don't have their entire mortgage, on their credit card. And so it's a way to really maximize your points. And so that I really don't spend usually for flights ever. And I travel at least once a month. It's different when you're going on like 4 vacations a year, but when you're traveling and flying, once a month, this month is a different kind of month, 5 flights like in a month, but I still don't need to pay for my flights. So.
Right. So I want to backtrack and clarify that frugality on the Frugal Physician is really about essentialism with money. We talk about selective frugality and selective extravagance, general frugality and selective extravagance, but credit card point hacking is a big part of our strategy. In fact, we had Devin Gimbel from Point Me to First Class on the podcast a couple of episodes ago, and make sure you listeners go out and check that out. She gave us a very nice intro on how to think about credit cards and credit card points and how to start, using them to hack your travel like you're doing, Kristine. Mm-hmm. And yeah, absolutely. I'm all about that too. But it's important to know that when you do credit card points that you are playing with fire and you cannot let that balance accumulate at the end of the month. You got to make sure to pay it off.
100% all the time, every time.
Right. Yeah. But if you do that, it can be such a boon for your travel and you can still have that first class experience without the first class bill.
Absolutely.
Which can be quite high.
Absolutely.
So while we're talking about money, let's talk about student loans, another favorite topic here at the Frugal Physician. If you have student loan debt, how can you handle that while you're pursuing time freedom and financial freedom and being nomadic?
Yeah, it was actually one of the things that really was weighing on me before I decided to leave. It was like, what about my student loans? Because I really thought the only way that I could ever afford to pay them off would be to use PSLF. And that would mean staying at a hospital, employed at a hospital. I really had to think that through and say, I definitely am going to pay off my student loans. But I had to think about who I was going to become in the process of doing that. If I was going to stay in that same position, did I like who I was going to be as an employed physician there 5 years or 7 years from then? I didn't like where that trajectory was going to lead. And so I had to think about what was important in regards to that. So I think it is important to think about your budget, to really have a really great emergency fund. And I had to be more open-minded about what are some really great ways to be able to save more and to be able to pay more into my student loans? And the very thing that I thought was the reason why I couldn't go away became the very reason why I needed to go, because I could save so much more traveling full time. Another thing was just opening my mind to other strategies. And so even if you wanted to apply and continue PSLF, you don't actually have to work for someone else's nonprofit. Nonprofit is something that you're really, really passionate about. You can always start your own nonprofit and work for yourself. And you can travel full time as you do that. So you really can take all of these strategies and when combined together, really have a powerful way of not only being able to, live a lifestyle or explore and be adventurous the way you might want to be, but also have a really impactful way of helping others, helping communities and causes that you really care about, and saving money and being able to pay off your student loans simultaneously.
That's revolutionary. I've never thought about that you could just start a nonprofit. Would it have to be a healthcare nonprofit? It wouldn't, right? It just has to be a 501c3.
Yes.
That's a huge loophole.
Yes.
So going back to you, what did you do with your student loans?
That is actually the strategy that I'm employing, is starting a nonprofit. It's something that I've always wanted to do. It's something that, as I've been traveling as a child and adolescent psychiatrist, going to different countries, connecting with a lot of locals who are doing similar work, thinking about how to, give back and support children in different countries. That's the strategy that I'm employing, is starting a nonprofit and working for myself.
How interesting. And do you provide psychiatric services to the kids, like in the countries that you go to?
No. I never do any consulting or contracting outside of the areas where my medical licenses are, which are in DC and Virginia. Okay. Yeah, you can't practice in different countries without having a license there.
Right. I mean, I've done work as a student, working for non-for-profits, just, volunteering in like a hospital in San Pedro Sula in Honduras. We didn't have a license there, but I didn't know if there was some sort of a loophole if you were a non-for-profit. How do you fund and what's the mission of your non-for-profit? I'm really interested to know.
Really what I want to focus on is how to combine helping children in regards to mental health with travel, and how travel actually can be really powerful in terms of helping to understand culture, helping to understand like yourselves, helping to think through like your own introspection. At least that's kind of been my experience when I talk to other travelers, because I meet a lot of nomads and expats in different countries.
Right.
And I've met people who have actually been in these type of programs that allowed them to live in different countries in their youth. And they talk about how transformational it was in terms of learning about their culture, who they are, and then also how to think through how to have openness and curiosity for other cultures, and how it really like impacts their mindset, the way they see the world, the way they see themselves, the way that they move in the world now as an adult. And I've found that to be really fascinating because travel has done the same for me. Like it's allowed me to have time freedom that's really been transformational in terms of how I see myself, the clarity that I have, the focus that I have on what's most important to me in my life and who I want to help and who I am. So I want to be able to give a similar experience to children in different parts of the world. And so I'm thinking through of how that would look for my nonprofit.
So tell me, how do you cover your health insurance when you're traveling? I'm sorry, I'm getting into like the nitty gritty of your finances.
No.
And I hope you're okay with
it's a
that.
really important thing to think about when you're traveling is think about health insurance. I feel like a lot of people, especially people who are on the younger side, do not think too much about the health insurance part of traveling. But I do international health insurance plans. And so there's a few different ways that you can do it. Some people who are not traveling full time, they will get, a health insurance plan in their country. And that's probably the most cost effective way to do it. But when you're traveling to different countries every few months, you want to be covered every single place that you go. So every country that I'm in, I'm covered. The only place that I don't have health insurance is the United States of America because it's very expensive.
Okay, so if you get sick, you're heading out of town.
Yeah, no, I'm on the first flight to Mexico. Well, I'm in Canada right now, so I'm in a good place.
All right.
But what the international health insurance plan also covers is that it can, in case of an extreme emergency, they would fly me back to the U.S.
Yeah, that evacuation piece is huge.
Yeah, so that's really important. And flying back into the U.S. because I don't live there is a qualifying life event. And so I would automatically be granted insurance if I were to have to come back into the U.S.
Oh, interesting. That's good to know. Mm-hmm. All right. So tell us a little bit about your favorite travels. I want to hear about where you've been and where you're going.
Yeah, so I've lived in quite a few different countries. I mean, I've traveled and visited many countries, but lived in, where I've been to the hospital, been to doctors, went to the dentist over there. I would say my favorite place that I've ever lived was Bocas del Toro. They're a group of islands off the coast of Panama. It was just amazing to live in the island. My day consisted of, I would wake up in the morning. The first thing I saw from bed was just the Caribbean Sea and the mountains. And I would get on my bike. I would ride my bike 30 minutes up the coast and into the jungle for yoga class. And then I would come home, walk into the city, catch a taxi boat to another island, watch the dolphins, journal, swim. It was just like
that sounds amazing.
I mean, of course, for the people there, that's just normal life. But for me, it was like, am I in heaven? Like,
that's exactly what I picture when I picture someone just like, screw medicine. I am traveling the world full time. I'm going to Panama. I've got a Panama hat and I'm just chilling on the beach doing yoga. I love it.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. So Panama, what else? Where else have you been?
I think another really interesting place that I lived was Georgia. I study wine, so I spend a lot of time in wine regions.
Oh, girl after my own heart.
Yeah. And Georgia's the birthplace of wine. I spent some time living in Tbilisi and Batumi. And that was just very interesting. The culture, the food is amazing. The language is amazing. So it was really wonderful kind of having an experience there. And everywhere I go, one of my, biggest goals is to develop a meaningful connection with locals there. And so every country that I've lived in, I have someone there that when I return is going to pick me up from the airport. So that's always my goal.
Love that.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, since you're a wine girl, we're going to Spain soon to the Jamila region, which has turned out to be one of my favorite regions these days because it makes this like really earthy red wine, but it's very economical at the same time, like $10 to $15 bottle of wine.
Much cheaper.
Yeah, much better than like the French Mourvedre, but it's kind of the same grape. So anyway, have you been there?
I have not been there. I have not been to Spain. Not yet.
All right. Well, I'll report back and we can exchange notes.
Let me know and let me know how long I should live there.
Sounds good. I love that. Well, Kristine, thank you so much for being here. I really, really enjoyed your travel stories and just you opening our minds up to all these possibilities and just designing life based on what's essentially what we value, right? And I mean, who doesn't want that? So is there anything else we should talk about that you'd like to share before we wrap up today?
I would just say that if there's any doctor out there who has a deep longing for travel, that I wouldn't ignore it, that it is an outward journey for an inward purpose. And so if you're really inspired to live your life in a certain way, do it. Your life is worth it.
Love that. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. And we're so glad you're stateside. I hope you have a great visit.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
What an inspiring story. I really enjoyed Kristine's perspective and her ability to think outside the box and take action. A reminder to our listeners out there, though, that while starting a 501c3 non-for-profit is certainly an option to pursue PSLF, there are many caveats there. You can't set up a charitable organization as a side gig and qualify for PSLF. Remember, PSLF, you have to be working full-time for a non-for-profit organization and have someone from that organization sign off on your employer certification forms. So if you're starting your side gig as a non-for-profit, obviously you're not working there full time. So this needs to be a legitimate non-for-profit company with a board of directors that's not you or your family. So there could be a little conflict of interest if you're getting PSLF and signing off your own employer certification forms. And remember, you're going to be looked at from the IRS as well as Fed Loan and Servicing. When you're doing this, you'll likely encounter a lot of scrutiny if you're doing it as a family business. So make sure you're very familiar with the IRS rules for a 501c3 and with the Fed loan rules for PSLF. Namely, you'll be setting up a legitimate company whose primary purpose is charitable, run it full time, work at least 30 hours a week there as per the PSLF rules. And again, you have to have a legitimate board of directors and formal employee agreements and benefits and such. So before you do this, I highly recommend you consult professionals such as accountants, attorneys, and Fed loan servicing. Make sure you've got all your bases covered and all your ducks in a row. It could be a lot easier just to go ahead and, work for another non-for-profit. The Student Loan Planner has a nice article on this and the caveats of starting a non-for-profit to qualify for PSLF. It's linked in the show notes. Make sure you go check it out. Kristine, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your story. I know Kristine is traveling full-time and she's going to be really putting a lot of that into how she structures her non-for-profit. She's going to make sure she does it right, and you should too. So that concludes today's episode of Finding Financial Freedom with the Frugal Physician. Thank you, Dr. Goins, for being our guest and providing your valuable guidance to our listeners. And to everyone listening here, if you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Please don't forget to visit www.thefrugalphysician.com. We just had a site upgrade and it looks beautiful. Thank you to my team for putting that together. It was a lot of work. Go check it out for more resources and updates. You can listen to this podcast there. You can look at our old blogs and new ones coming up there. And there are some freebies for you to download as well. Until next time, remember, financial freedom is within reach. And with the right strategies, you can achieve it. Stay frugal, y'all, and keep working towards your dreams. I'll see you next time. Now, a final word from our sponsor. At Pearson Rabbits, they understand that life can change in an instant. It's hard to imagine that a sudden illness, injury, or catastrophic event could put you and your family in a devastating financial situation. Physician-founded and physician-focused, Pearson Rabbits builds human connections before they create quotes. Visit www.pearsonrabbits.com today and embark on your journey to safeguarding your future.
The content shared on this podcast should not be taken as individualized financial advice. We are here to share our knowledge and experiences, but it is crucial to consult with professionals such as accountants, financial advisors, or attorneys who can provide personalized guidance based on your specific needs.